Marcus Chun wiped the grease from his hands as the mining drill finally came to a halt. The asteroid belt around Kepler 442 had been his home for 3 years now, ever since the Earth Consortium had assigned him to this remote outpost. Most people would have gone crazy from the isolation, but Marcus found peace in the endless void and the steady rhythm of extracting rare metals from floating rocks. His communication array crackled to life, cutting through the silence of his one-man operation. At first, he thought it was static from a solar storm, but the pattern was too regular, too deliberate. Someone or something was trying to communicate. "This is Mining Station Delta 7. Marcus spoke into his headset. "Please identify yourself." The response nearly made him fall out of his chair. A deep, resonant voice filled his small cabin, speaking in accented but clear English. "Human vessel, we are the Drachmarie. We seek audience with your kind. Our need is great." Marcus had heard rumors of alien contact in the outer systems, but the Earth Consortium kept such information classified. He was just a miner, not a diplomat or military officer. Yet here he was, apparently making first contact with an alien species. "I'm just one person," Marcus replied carefully. "I don't speak for humanity or Earth. What kind of help are you looking for? May we approach your vessel? We understand humans respond better to visual communication." Marcus hesitated. His mining station had basic defensive systems, but nothing that could handle a serious threat. On the other hand, if these beings meant harm, they probably could have destroyed his station already. "Approach slowly. Any aggressive movements, and I'll have to defend myself." "Understood, human. We come in peace." 20 minutes later, Marcus pressed his face against the observation window and felt his jaw drop. Approaching his station was a massive creature that could only be described as a dragon from Earth's mythology. Its scales shimmered with an iridescent blue-green color, and its wingspan had to be at least 200 meters. But this wasn't just one creature. Behind the first dragon came dozens more, their scales ranging from deep purple to brilliant gold. The lead dragon carefully positioned itself near Marcus's docking port. Somehow, it managed to interface with his station's systems, creating an atmospheric seal that allowed for direct communication without spacesuits. Marcus opened the airlock, his heart pounding. The dragon's head alone was larger than his entire living quarters, yet its movements were graceful and controlled. When it spoke, its voice rumbled through his chest. "I am HFY, speaker for the Drachmarie Migration Fleet. You honor us by accepting our approach, human Marcus Chun." "What do you know my name?" Marcus asked, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. "Your communication beacon broadcasts your identification. We have studied human languages and customs in preparation for this meeting. We know your people value direct communication, so we will speak plainly." HFY's massive golden eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like he was being evaluated on a cosmic scale. "Our species faces extinction, human. We have traveled across 3 galaxies seeking a new home, but everywhere we go, we are met with fear and violence. Worlds see us approach and assume we come as conquerors. Can't say I blame them," Marcus muttered, then quickly added, "No offense. You're pretty intimidating." The dragon made a sound that might have been laughter. "None taken. We understand the effect our appearance has on other species. In truth, we are an ancient race, but not a warlike one. We are gardeners, Marcus Chun. We cultivate worlds, helping them reach their full potential. But our homeworld was consumed by its dying star, and now we search for a place where we can continue our work." Marcus listened in fascination as HFY explained their plight. The Drachmarie had been spacefaring for millennia, but they were nomadic by necessity rather than choice. They required specific atmospheric conditions and mineral compositions to survive, and such worlds were rare in this part of the galaxy. "Every species we've approached has rejected us," HFY continued. "The Zelnari fired upon us without warning. The Crystalline Collective declared us abominations. The Union of Free Planets offered us a barren moon in exchange for decades of servitude. We grow weary of rejection and conflict. So why come to me? Marcus asked. I'm nobody special, just a guy with a drill and a desire to be left alone. Because, Teacher said, we have observed humanity from a distance. Your species is young, but you show remarkable adaptability. You have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and still you reach for the stars. More importantly, you have a concept that other species lack, which is hope combined with pragmatism. You dare to dream of impossible things, but you also find practical ways to make them real. We believe your people might see opportunity where others see only threat. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he'd heard. The logical part of his mind told him to report this to Earth Command and let the diplomats handle it. But something about Tifasura's words resonated with him. He'd come to the asteroid belt partly to escape the endless political squabbling back home. But maybe this was bigger than politics. What exactly are you asking for? He finally said. We wish to present our case to your governing bodies. We have much to offer in exchange for sanctuary. Our knowledge of stellar engineering could advance human technology by centuries. Our horticultural techniques could terraform dead worlds into gardens. We could be valuable allies. But you need someone to vouch for you. To make the introduction. More than that, Tikasur said, we need someone who understands both sides. Someone who can help bridge the gap between human caution and Drachmarid desperation. We have studied your personal history, Marcus Chun. You were a xenobiologist before you became a miner. You understand the delicate balance required when two species meet. Marcus was surprised they knew about his former career. He'd given up xenobiology after a bitter divorce and the crushing bureaucracy of academic research. Mining asteroids was simple, honest work with clear goals and measurable results. That was a long time ago, he said. Knowledge once gained is never truly lost. You have the scientific background to understand our needs and the practical experience to appreciate the challenges of implementation. And if I say no, THYSS was quiet for a moment. Then we continue our search. But time grows short for our people. We have perhaps 2 standard years before our resources are exhausted. After that, the dragon's voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Marcus found himself thinking about his life on the mining station. It was peaceful, yes, but was it meaningful? He'd spent 3 years avoiding human contact, hiding from the complications of civilization. Maybe it was time to engage with something bigger than himself again. I'll need to see your ships, meet your people, understand what you're really offering, he said finally. Of course, we would welcome a full inspection of our fleet. And I'll need guarantees. If I'm going to put my reputation on the line, I need to know you're legitimate. What would constitute proof of our sincerity? Marcus thought for a moment. Share your technology. Not everything, but something significant. Show me you're serious about partnership, not conquest. Tikasura's massive head tilted slightly. You asked for trust before offering trust in return. This is unexpected. It's human, Marcus said with a slight smile. We're a paranoid species, but we're also capable of great loyalty once that trust is earned. Very well. Come aboard our primary vessel. We will show you our archives, our technology, our culture. Judge for yourself whether we are worthy of human consideration. As Marcus prepared to leave his mining station, he couldn't help but feel he was crossing a threshold. His quiet life among the asteroids was ending, but something told him the adventure ahead would be worth the risk. The Dragon Fleet was even more impressive up close. Their ships were living vessels, grown rather than built, with organic curves that seemed to breathe in the starlight. The largest ship was easily 10 kilometers long, its surface covered with what looked like scales, but were actually photosynthetic energy collectors. Inside, the ship was a marvel of bioengineering. Corridors pulsed with gentle bioluminescence, and the walls seemed to respond to touch with subtle color changes. Titrasra led him through vast chambers where other dragons worked at tasks Marcus couldn't begin to understand. This is our archive, Titrasra said, gesturing with one massive claw toward a chamber filled with crystalline structures that hummed with energy. The collected knowledge of our civilization, dating back 50,000 of your years. And you'd share this? Selected portions, yes. Enough to prove our value as allies, not enough to make us vulnerable to exploitation. Marcus spent hours examining Drachmary technology. Their understanding of genetics and biological engineering was centuries ahead of human science. They could grow entire ecosystems from basic organic compounds, creating self-sustaining environments on worlds that had never known life. But it was their desperation that convinced him more than their technology. As he toured the fleet, he saw dragon younglings who had never known a true home, elderly dragons whose scales had lost their luster from years of shipbound existence. These weren't conquerors. They were refugees with incredible gifts to offer. There's one more thing you need to understand, Marcus said as they concluded the tour. What is that? Humans are going to be afraid of you at first. You look like creatures from our oldest nightmares. But you also look like creatures from our greatest myths. Dragons are part of our cultural DNA, symbols of both terror and wisdom. How do we overcome this contradiction? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking. By being patient. By proving that you're the wise dragons, not the destructive ones. And by finding the right humans to make your case. You will help us? Marcus looked around at the magnificent ship, at the desperate hope in the eyes of every dragon he'd met, and at the vast potential for mutual benefit that lay before both species. Yeah, he said finally. I'll help you. But we're going to do this smart. No grand gestures, no dramatic reveals. We start small, build trust gradually, and hope that human curiosity wins out over human fear. What do you propose? First, we contact my old university. There are people there who might be interested in a controlled first contact scenario. Scientists who can appreciate what you're offering without immediately panicking about invasion. And if they refuse, then we try someone else, and someone else after that. Humans are stubborn, but we're also curious. Eventually, someone will take the bait. As Marcus began composing the most important message of his life, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to change the course of human history. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen, but at least he wouldn't be bored anymore. The mining station that had been his refuge for 3 years suddenly felt very small compared to the vast possibilities stretching out before him. He was no longer just Marcus Chun, asteroid miner. He was humanity's first ambassador to a species that could reshape the galaxy. No pressure at all. Dr. Elena Vasquez nearly choked on her coffee when she opened Marcus's encrypted message. She had to read it 3 times before the words sank in, and even then, her scientific mind rebelled against the implications. This is impossible, she muttered to her empty laboratory at the University of New Geneva. She and Marcus had been colleagues 15 years ago, before his messy departure from academia. He'd been brilliant then, one of the most promising xenobiologists of his generation, but personal problems had driven him to exile himself in the asteroid belt. Now he was claiming to have made contact with a spacefaring species that looked like dragons from Earth mythology. The rational part of her mind screamed hoax, but the attached data files were too sophisticated to fake, and she knew Marcus well enough to trust his scientific integrity. The knock on her laboratory door made her jump. Her research assistant, David Park, poked his head inside with his usual cheerful grin. "Professor, you missed the faculty meeting again. Dean Morrison is starting to think you're avoiding him." "David, cancel my appointments for the rest of the week," Elena said, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "All of them, even the grant review with the consortium, especially that one. And I need you to contact these people." She handed him a hastily scrawled list. "Tell them it's urgent, classified, and they need to get to the secure communication chamber within the hour." David's eyebrows rose as he read the list. Professor Williams from Interspecies Psychology, Dr. Zhang from Xenobiology, Commander Torres from the Space Defense Force. "Elena, what's going on?" "Potentially the most important discovery in human history," she replied, already pulling up the quantum communication array. "And if I'm wrong, the end of my career." An hour later, Elena found herself in the university's most secure conference room, facing 5 of the most respected minds in their respective fields. She'd worked with all of them at various points in her career, but this was the first time she'd called them together for something that wasn't officially sanctioned by the Earth Consortium. "Before I begin," she said, her hands trembling slightly, "I need everyone to sign a non-disclosure agreement. What I'm about to show you is either the discovery of the century or an elaborate hoax. And either way, it needs to stay in this room until we can verify the facts." Professor Williams, an elderly man with kind eyes and a reputation for unflappable calm, leaned forward. "Elena, in 40 years of studying alien psychology, I've learned that the universe has a sense of humor. What's the punchline this time?" Elena activated the holographic display and began playing Marcus's recordings. The room fell silent as Tikasura's massive form filled the projection space, her words echoing clearly through the speakers. Commander Torres was the first to break the silence. "Computer graphics have come a long way, Elena, but this is clearly fabricated. No biological organism could survive in the vacuum of space without protection." "That's what I thought too," Elena replied, bringing up the spectral analysis data. "But look at these readings. The electromagnetic signatures, the biological markers, the gravitational distortions caused by their ships. David, show them the authentication protocols." Her assistant had been quietly running verification algorithms on the data. "Professor, I've analyzed every frame, every data point. If this is a fake, it's beyond anything in our current technology. The processing power alone would require a quantum computer array that doesn't exist outside of government installations." Dr. Zhang, a brilliant xenobiologist with more field experience than anyone else in the room, studied the biological scans with intense focus. "The cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases, but it's internally consistent. Look at these energy conversion processes. They're using some kind of biological photovoltaic system that's theoretically possible, but practically impossible to fake. So we're saying this is real?" Professor Williams asked slowly. "Marcus Chun has actually made contact with a species of space dragons." "That's what the evidence suggests," Elena confirmed. "But there's more. They're not just making contact. They're asking for help. They're refugees looking for a new home." The room erupted in excited conversation. Commander Torres was already calculating military implications, while the scientists peppered Elena with questions faster than she could answer them. "Quiet." Professor Williams's voice cut through the chatter. "Elena, what exactly are they proposing?" "A formal first contact with Earth leadership. They want to present their case for sanctuary in exchange for technological assistance. Marcus is acting as an intermediary, but he's requested a team of experts to help evaluate their claims." "And you want us to be that team?" Dr. Zhang asked. "I want us to be the first humans to make a rational decision about this," Elena corrected. "The consortium has protocols for alien contact, but they're all based on the assumption that any advanced species would be potentially hostile. These Drachmari claim to be peaceful refugees with valuable knowledge to trade." Commander Torres frowned. "Claims are one thing, Professor. I've seen too many civilizations destroyed by trusting the wrong aliens." "Have you actually seen any civilizations destroyed by aliens, Commander?" Professor Williams asked mildly. "Because I'm fairly certain this would be humanity's first confirmed contact with an intelligent species. You know what I mean? Historical precedent from human cultures meeting more advanced civilizations is not encouraging. Which is exactly why we need to be smart about this," Elena said. "Marcus suggests a gradual approach. Limited contact, careful evaluation, building trust over time. But first, we need to determine if they're legitimate." She brought up a new display showing the Drachmari fleet's current position. "They're holding station in the outer asteroid belt, about 6 days' travel from here. Marcus has invited a small team to visit and conduct a full evaluation of their claims." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just talking about analyzing data anymore. They were talking about leaving Earth to meet with an alien species that looked like mythological creatures. Dr. Zhang was the first to speak. "I'll go." "Are you insane?" Commander Torres demanded. "Walk into what could be the most sophisticated trap in galactic history, or miss the opportunity of a lifetime." Jean countered. Commander, with respect, your job is to assume the worst about everything. Mine is to study the unknown and expand human knowledge. This is what I've trained for my entire career. Professor Williams nodded slowly. I agree with Dr. Zhang. The psychological implications alone. We're talking about a species that claims to have existed for 50,000 years. The insights into long-term civilization development could revolutionize our understanding of social evolution. Elena. Commander Torres looked at her with concern. Please tell me you're not seriously considering this. Elena was quiet for a long moment, weighing the risks against the potential benefits. Her career had been built on careful, methodical research, but sometimes science required leaps of faith. I'm not just considering it, she said finally. I'm organizing it, but we're going to do this properly. Full quarantine protocols, multiple backup communication systems, and a predetermined evacuation plan if things go wrong. The consortium will never approve this, Torres warned. That's why we're not asking permission, Elena replied. We're going to conduct a preliminary evaluation and present our findings to the consortium afterward. If we're wrong, we take the fall. If we're right, we'll have potentially saved humanity from missing the greatest opportunity in our history. Over the next 3 days, Elena assembled what she privately called the First Contact Team. In addition to the core group from the university, she recruited Dr. Sarah Kim, a linguist who specialized in communication with non-human intelligence. And, surprisingly, Commander Torres agreed to join as their security advisor. Someone has to keep you scientists from getting yourselves killed, he grumbled, but Elena could see the curiosity burning in his eyes. The hardest part was arranging transportation without alerting the consortium. Fortunately, Elena had connections with several independent shipping companies that operated in the outer system. For the right price, and no questions asked, they could get passage on a cargo vessel heading toward the asteroid belt. The journey gave them time to study every piece of data Marcus had transmitted. The Drachmary language appeared to be highly mathematical, with complex grammatical structures that suggested a species comfortable with abstract thinking. Their technology was primarily biological, using engineered organisms for everything from ship construction to energy production. Most intriguingly, their historical records suggested they had encountered dozens of other intelligent species in their travels across the galaxy. If true, the Drachmary could provide humanity with its first comprehensive map of galactic civilization. Look at this, Dr. Kim said on their 4th day of travel, highlighting a section of translated text. They described something they call the Great Silence that occurred approximately 3,000 years ago. Multiple civilizations apparently went dark around the same time period. Professor Williams suggested. Possibly, but they describe it more like a voluntary withdrawal, as if entire species decided to stop participating in galactic affairs. Or something made them stop, Commander Torres added grimly. When they finally reached Marcus's mining station, Elena felt her heart racing with excitement and terror. Through the viewport, she could see the Dragon fleet in the distance, their bioships glowing softly in the starlight. They were real, magnificent, and utterly alien. Marcus looked older than she remembered, but his eyes held excitement she hadn't seen since their university days. Elena, I can't believe you actually came. I can't believe you're still alive, she replied, embracing her old colleague. When I got your message, I thought you'd finally cracked from all that isolation. I thought so too at first. But wait until you meet them. They're incredible. The introduction was carefully orchestrated. HFY approached Elena's ship slowly, her massive form visible through the observation windows. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of eons, but also a surprising gentleness. Greetings, humans of Earth. I am honored to meet those who would brave the unknown to seek understanding. Elena found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. The honor is ours, HFY. We come seeking truth and hoping for friendship. Diplomatically spoken, Marcus chose his allies well. Over the following days, Elena's team conducted the most comprehensive xenobiological study in human history. They toured the Drachmary ships, interviewed dozens of dragons, analyzed their technology, and documented everything with scientific precision. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. The Drachmari were exactly what they claimed to be, an ancient, peaceful species with knowledge and technology that could transform human civilization. But they were also desperate, their resources dwindling, their people dying slowly from the stress of endless travel. We have perhaps 18 months before our bio ships begin failing, HFY Story explained during one of their conferences. Our population is aging, and we lack the resources to properly maintain our fleet. We need a stable base of operations where we can rebuild and recover. And you think humanity can provide that? Elena asked. We hope humanity will see the mutual benefit. We offer knowledge that could advance your species by centuries. In return, we ask only for a small portion of a suitable world where we can establish a permanent home. Dr. Zhang was practically vibrating with excitement as he analyzed Drachmari genetic engineering techniques. Elena, they could solve climate change on Earth overnight. Their atmospheric processors could terraform Mars within a decade. This isn't just first contact. It's a chance to join the galactic community as equals rather than primitives. But it was Professor Williams who raised the critical question. HFY, you've encountered dozens of species in your travels. Why have so many rejected your offers of cooperation? The ancient dragon was quiet for a long moment. Fear primarily. Most young species see any advanced civilization as a threat to their independence. They prefer to remain isolated rather than risk being overwhelmed by superior technology. Have any species ever regretted accepting your help? None that survived to regret it. The answer sent a chill through the human team, until Teacher Cicera clarified with what might have been amusement. I speak of natural disasters, wars between species, stellar catastrophes. The universe is a dangerous place, humans. Species that survive are those that adapt and grow. Those that refuse help when it is offered often do not endure. As their evaluation period drew to a close, Elena faced the most difficult decision of her career. Everything the Drachmari had told them appeared to be true, but the implications were staggering. If humanity accepted their offer, it would mean abandoning their isolation and joining a galaxy that might not be as empty as they'd assumed. What's your recommendation? Marcus asked during their final private conference. Elena looked around at her team. Dr. Zhang was obviously in favor, his scientific excitement overriding any caution. Dr. Kim was fascinated by the linguistic implications and supported contact. Professor Williams saw the psychological and sociological benefits of alliance with an ancient species. Even Commander Torres, despite his military paranoia, admitted that the strategic advantages outweighed the risks. I think, Elena said slowly, that we're about to change the course of human history. The question is whether we're brave enough to make the right choice. The emergency session of the Earth Consortium Council was unlike any in its 200-year history. Elena stood before the assembled representatives of every major human government and colony, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. Secretary General Harrison Chen looked skeptical as he reviewed the preliminary report. Dr. Vasquez, you're asking us to believe that a mining engineer made contact with a species of space dragons, and you took it upon yourself to conduct unauthorized negotiations? I'm asking you to review the evidence with an open mind, Secretary General, Elena replied calmly. The data speaks for itself. The holographic display activated, filling the chamber with images of the Drachmari fleet. Gasps echoed through the room as Tenesura's massive form appeared, her words playing clearly through the speakers. Representative Sarah Mitchell from the Mars colonies leaned forward. Assuming this isn't the most elaborate hoax in history, what exactly are these creatures proposing? Elena activated a prepared presentation. The Drachmari offer a technology exchange that could advance human civilization by several centuries. In return, they seek sanctuary on a suitable world within human space. And you believe them? This came from General Roberts, the military representative. A species that powerful could simply take what they want. Why negotiate? Because, Elena said, bringing up psychological profiles her team had compiled, they're not conquerors. They're gardeners. Their entire culture is built around nurturing and developing worlds, not destroying them. Professor Williams, would you care to elaborate? The elderly psychologist stood slowly. In my evaluation, the Drachmarie display none of the typical markers of an aggressive, expansionist species. Their social structure is built around cooperation and long-term thinking. They've survived for 50,000 years by being partners, not parasites. 50,000 years, Representative Khan from Earth's African Union repeated slowly. If true, they've seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. What makes them think we're worth their time? Elena smiled slightly. According to HFY Story, we have something most species lack: hope combined with pragmatism. They've observed humanity's ability to survive impossible odds and still reach for the stars. They believe we're mature enough to handle partnership with an advanced species. The debate that followed was fierce and extended. Military representatives worried about security threats. Economic advisors calculated the cost of establishing a colony world for refugees. Colonial governors questioned the precedent of accepting alien settlers. But it was Dr. Zhang's presentation on Drachmarie biotechnology that began to shift the mood. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the ability to terraform dead worlds in years instead of centuries. Atmospheric processors that could make Venus habitable. Genetic therapies that could eliminate disease and extend human lifespan by decades. What's the catch? Asked Representative Williams from the outer colonies. Nothing comes without a price. Elena had expected this question. The price is trust. They're asking us to believe that a partnership with them will benefit both species. In return, they're offering to share knowledge that could make us players on a galactic scale instead of isolated primitives. Galactic scale? Secretary General Chen's eyebrows rose. Are you suggesting there are other civilizations out there? The Drachmarie have encountered dozens of intelligent species in their travels, Elena confirmed. Most have either rejected contact or withdrawn from galactic affairs entirely. We could be walking into a galaxy full of civilizations that want nothing to do with newcomers. Or, Professor Williams added, we could be joining a community that we never knew existed. The potential benefits are enormous. The session continued for hours, with representatives calling for recesses to consult with their governments. Elena found herself answering the same questions repeatedly. How do we know they're telling the truth? What are the risks? What if this goes wrong? Finally, Secretary General Chen called for order. Dr. Vasquez, this council needs to make a decision that could affect the entire future of humanity. We need more than your team's assessment. We need to meet with these Drachmarie ourselves. Elena had anticipated this as well. They're willing to send a delegation to Earth orbit for formal negotiations. 3 of their ships, minimal crew, maximum transparency. They understand that trust must be built gradually. Security concerns? General Roberts asked. Commander Torres stepped forward. I've analyzed their weapon systems. Their ships are primarily defensive, designed for protection during long space voyages rather than offensive operations. We could destroy their delegation if necessary, though the moral implications would be catastrophic. Moral implications. Representative Mitchell looked puzzled. Ma'am, if we invite them to Earth and then attack them, we'd be committing genocide against a species that approached us in peace. The psychological damage to human civilization would be irreparable. Elena watched as the weight of the decision settled over the chamber. They weren't just voting on alien contact. They were choosing the kind of species humanity would become. The final vote was closer than Elena had hoped. 127 in favor of formal contact, 94 opposed, with 23 abstentions. It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was enough. 3 weeks later, Elena found herself aboard the Earth Defense Force's flagship, the Terran Pride, watching 3 Drachmarie bioships approach Earth orbit. The ships were beautiful in a way that human vessels could never match, their organic curves catching and reflecting light like living jewels. My God, breathed Captain Rodriguez, the ship's commander. They're magnificent. The formal first contact ceremony was broadcast to every human colony and settlement. Tetra and two other Drachmary representatives came aboard the Terran Pride, their massive forms carefully accommodated in the ship's largest cargo bay. Secretary General Chun spoke first, his words carefully crafted by diplomatic committees. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to our system. We hope this meeting marks the beginning of friendship between our peoples. Tetra's response was equally formal, but carried undertones that Elena was learning to recognize as genuine emotion. Honored Secretary General, we are grateful for your courage in accepting this contact. Few species have shown such wisdom when faced with the unknown. The negotiations that followed were complex and sometimes heated. Human representatives wanted detailed guarantees, technology demonstrations, and extensive background checks. The Drachmary, despite their desperate situation, maintained their dignity and refused to be treated as charity cases. We offer partnership, not servitude, Tetra stated firmly when General Roberts suggested military service in exchange for sanctuary. Our knowledge and abilities are gifts to be shared with friends, not payments to be extracted by masters. Elena found herself serving as an unofficial mediator, helping both sides understand each other's perspectives. The humans needed reassurance that they weren't inviting conquerors into their midst. The Drachmary needed respect for their ancient culture and traditions. The breakthrough came when Dr. Zhang proposed a pilot program. Instead of committing to a full colony world immediately, what if we started smaller? A single habitat station where both species could live and work together. Prove the concept on a limited scale. An interesting proposal, HFY mused. Where would such a station be located? Elena had been thinking about this possibility for weeks. The Titan system, Saturn's moon, has the right atmospheric conditions, and there's plenty of space for expansion. It's also far enough from Earth to ease security concerns while remaining accessible for regular contact. The proposal sparked new rounds of negotiation, but Elena could see the mood shifting. Instead of arguing about whether cooperation was possible, they were now discussing how to make it work. Representative Khan raised a crucial point. What happens if this pilot program succeeds? Are we talking about full integration of Drachmary refugees into human space? That would depend on the success of the initial collaboration, Tetra replied. We do not seek to overwhelm your civilization with our presence. A few hundred of our people to begin with, perhaps a few thousand if all goes well. A few thousand? General Roberts looked alarmed. That's hardly a refugee population. Elena realized the misunderstanding immediately. General, the Drachmary live for millennia. 1,000 individuals to them is like 100,000 to us in terms of cultural and technological impact. This led to extensive discussions about Drachmary biology and society. Elena's team had learned that the dragons aged slowly, reproduced rarely, and thought in terms of centuries rather than years. Their refugee fleet contained fewer than 50,000 individuals total, the survivors of a civilization that had once numbered in the millions. We are a dying people, admitted Vorthak, one of Professor's companions. Not through war or disease, but through the exhaustion of endless wandering. Our young no longer dream of the future. They simply endure the present. The emotional weight of this admission hung heavy in the chamber. Elena saw several human representatives exchanging uncomfortable glances. They were being asked to help save a species that had existed since before human civilization began. Professor Williams leaned forward. Vorthak, what your young dream of? What would restore their hope? A world to call home, soil to tend, stars to watch from a place that will not move beneath their feet. Simple things that we have not known for 3,000 years. The negotiations continued for days, with both sides making concessions. Humans agreed to provide resources and territory for a limited Drachmary settlement. The Drachmary agreed to extensive monitoring, gradual technology transfer, and integration protocols that would ease human fears about cultural contamination. But it was Elena who proposed the element that finally made the agreement possible. Exchange programs, she said during one particularly heated session. Human volunteers to work with Drachmary technology and Drachmary volunteers to help with human projects. Not just technology transfer, but cultural exchange. Let our species learn from each other naturally. Scifistories' great eyes brightened with interest. Young humans working alongside ancient Drachmary? The learning would flow both ways. Exactly, Elena said. Your people have knowledge, but humans have perspective. We see things differently because we're younger, more impulsive, more willing to take risks. Maybe that combination could achieve things neither species could manage alone. Secretary General Chun nodded slowly. A true partnership, not just a refugee arrangement. The final agreement was signed 6 days later in a ceremony that was broadcast across human space and transmitted to every Drachmary ship in the fleet. Elena felt tears running down her face as she watched Tikasa and Secretary General Chun formally commit their species to friendship. Marcus, who had been largely silent during the negotiations, approached Elena afterward. Do you think we did the right thing? Elena looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity had just taken its first step into a wider galaxy. I think we did the human thing, she said. We took a risk for the chance at something better. Now we find out if that was wisdom or folly. And if it's folly? Elena smiled. Then at least we'll face the consequences with the most magnificent allies in the galaxy. As the Drachmary ships prepared to accompany human vessels to the Titan system, Elena couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning. They had solved the immediate crisis, but the real work of building an interspecies civilization was just starting. The universe suddenly felt much larger and full of possibilities that hadn't existed a month earlier. Humanity was no longer alone, and that changed everything. 6 months after the formal agreement, Elena stood on the observation deck of Titan Station and marveled at what human Drachmary cooperation had accomplished. What had been a barren moon was now showing the first signs of transformation, with vast atmospheric processors creating pockets of breathable air and organic matter beginning to take root in previously sterile soil. It's remarkable, said Dr. James Okafor, the station's chief engineer. The Drachmary bioshaping techniques are beyond anything we imagine possible. They're literally growing infrastructure from modified organisms. Elena nodded, watching a team of humans and dragons work together to plant the foundation for what would become a living city. The partnership hadn't been without challenges, but the results spoke for themselves. Dr. Vasquez, you have an urgent message from Earth, announced the station's AI. Priority Alpha classification. Elena's stomach tightened. Priority Alpha meant crisis-level importance. She hurried to the secure communication chamber, where Secretary General Chen's image appeared on the holographic display. Elena, we have a problem, Chun said without preamble. Long-range sensors have detected multiple fleets approaching our outer system. Large fleets. They're not responding to our communication attempts. How long until they arrive? 48 hours for the nearest group. Elena, these aren't exploration vessels. The energy signatures suggest heavy military configurations. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. I'll get HFY Cicera immediately. She found the ancient dragon in the hydroponics bay, working with a group of human botanists to develop new food crops that could thrive in multiple atmospheric conditions. The sight of the massive creature delicately adjusting plant nutrients with precision tools never failed to amaze her. HFY Cicera, we need to talk. Privately, the dragon's golden eyes fixed on Elena's face, reading her expression instantly. What has happened? Unknown fleets are approaching Earth. Multiple groups, heavily armed. Secretary General Chun thinks they might be responding to our first contact broadcasts. Cicera was silent for a long moment, her massive form utterly still. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made Elena's chest tighten with dread. How many fleets? The reports mentioned at least 6 separate groups. Why? Do you recognize the signatures? Perhaps. Come, we must contact your leadership immediately and gather the other speaker-cast dragons. If this is what I fear, your species is about to face its first test as a member of the galactic community. The emergency conference included representatives from Earth, the major colonies, and all the senior Drachmae currently at Titan Station. The holographic display showed the approaching fleets in stark detail, massive vessels of various designs, clearly from different civilizations. I recognize several of these configurations, Tivra said grimly. The crystalline ships belong to the Shektar hegemony. The biomechanical vessels are HFY designs. The geometric formations, those are Vorlock warships. All species that rejected you. Elena asked. Worse, species that view our existence as a threat to galactic stability. They believe that ancient civilizations like ours should remain extinct, not seek new homes among younger races. Commander Torres, participating via quantum link from Earth Defense Command, leaned forward. What exactly are we dealing with here? What are their capabilities? Vorthak, another ancient dragon, answered with chilling precision. The Shektar hegemony commands crystal-based technology that can destabilize molecular bonds at the quantum level. The HFY creates self-replicating war machines that consume entire fleets for raw materials. The Vorlock, he paused. The Vorlock destroy civilizations for sport. My God, Secretary General Chun breathed. How many ships in total? Based on these energy signatures, approximately 300 vessels across all fleets, HFY calculated. Each one equivalent to a dozen of your most advanced warships. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's entire defensive fleet consisted of maybe 40 ships, most of them designed for patrol duties rather than major combat operations. So what are our options? Asked General Roberts, his military mind already working on defensive strategies. You have three choices, Tika said solemnly. Surrender us to appease the attacking fleets, fight alongside us, and likely face extinction, or... She hesitated. Or what? Elena demanded. Prove that humanity deserves membership in the galactic community by demonstrating the one quality that separates successful species from failed ones, which is the willingness to do what others consider impossible. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What exactly are you suggesting? Tika's massive head turned to gaze out at the stars. The approaching species represent the old order of the galaxy. They believe that survival requires isolation, that cooperation leads to weakness, that young civilizations must be contained before they become threats. And you disagree? We have spent 3,000 years watching civilizations rise and fall under this philosophy. The galaxy grows emptier each century as species choose isolation over growth, suspicion over cooperation. But humanity, her voice carried a note of something Elena had never heard before. Hope. Humanity might be different. Dr. Zhang, who had been studying Drachmae historical records, suddenly looked up from his data pad. The great silence you mentioned before. It wasn't voluntary withdrawal, was it? Tetra Cicera and Vorthak exchanged a look that communicated volumes. Perceptive, young scientist. No, it was not voluntary. 3,000 years ago, a coalition of older civilizations decided that the galaxy had become too crowded with competing interests. They issued an ultimatum: withdraw from galactic affairs or be forced to withdraw. Forced how? Through the systematic destruction of any civilization that refused to isolate itself. The coalition called it pruning for galactic stability. We called it genocide. Elena felt sick. And now they're coming here because we made contact with you? They're coming because humanity did something no species has done for 3 millennia, Vorthak explained. You chose cooperation over isolation when faced with the unknown. You risked everything for the possibility of something better. To the old coalition, that makes you the greatest threat the galaxy has seen in eons. But we're just one species, protested Representative Mitchell via quantum link. We haven't even fully explored our own solar system, which is exactly why you're dangerous to them, Tika said. You're young enough to dream of impossible things, but advanced enough to potentially achieve them. Worse, You've proven that cooperation between species is possible. If that knowledge spreads, other young civilizations might try the same thing, Elena finished. And the old order's control over galactic affairs would crumble. The strategic discussion that followed was unlike anything in human military history. They were planning not just for their own survival, but for the future of galactic civilization itself. "What are the Drachmari capable of militarily?" asked General Roberts. "I need to know what assets we have." HFY Cicero was quiet for a moment. "Our people are pacifists by nature, General. We have not engaged in warfare for millennia." However, she looked at her companions. "We do possess certain capabilities that we developed for planetary defense during our migrations, such as stellar engineering, the ability to manipulate solar output, create localized gravitational anomalies, redirect asteroid fields. Our bioships can grow additional defensive systems if needed. And the human assets?" Elena found herself thinking strategically for the first time in her life. "We have something they don't expect: unpredictability. These coalition species have been playing by the same rules for 3,000 years. They think they know how galactic politics work. But they've never dealt with humans," Commander Torres said slowly. "Species that consider retreat as shameful as defeat. More than that," added Dr. Kim, "they've never dealt with a species that routinely does things that should be impossible. Humans have a talent for finding solutions that nobody else thinks of." Marcus, who had been silent throughout the discussion, suddenly spoke up. "What if we don't fight them at all?" Everyone turned to stare at the former asteroid miner. "Explain," demanded General Roberts. "The old coalition maintains control through fear and isolation. What if, instead of fighting them, we invite everyone to the party?" "I don't follow," Elena said. Marcus was getting excited, his engineer's mind working through possibilities. "HFY Cesura, how many young civilizations are currently being suppressed by this coalition? How many species are living in isolation because they're afraid to reach out?" "Dozens, perhaps hundreds." "And what do you think would happen if they suddenly saw proof that cooperation was possible, that the coalition could be challenged successfully?" Elena's eyes widened as she understood. "You're talking about revolution, galactic revolution." "I'm talking about showing the galaxy that there's a better way to live," Marcus corrected. "But first, we have to survive the next 48 hours. HFY Cesura was studying Marcus with new respect. "You propose to turn this attack into a demonstration? To show other civilizations that resistance is possible?" "I propose we do what humans do best," Marcus replied. "We improvise, adapt, and overcome. But this time we do it on a galactic scale." The plan that emerged from the next 18 hours of frantic preparation was audacious even by human standards. Instead of preparing for a traditional defensive battle, they would attempt something that had never been tried in recorded galactic history. Elena found herself coordinating communications with every intelligent species that long-range sensors could detect. They sent a simple message: the old rules are changing. Come and witness the birth of a new galactic order. HFY Cicera and her fellow dragons began modifying their bioships for tasks they had never been designed for. Human engineers worked alongside alien biotechnicians to create hybrid technologies that neither species could have achieved alone. But the most important preparation was psychological. As Elena transmitted humanity's message to the approaching fleets, she realized they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the right to exist as they chose to exist, as partners, allies, and friends to any species brave enough to reach out. This is Elena Vasquez, speaking for humanity and our Drachmari allies. She broadcast on all frequencies. To the approaching fleets, we know why you've come. You believe that cooperation between species leads to chaos, that young civilizations must be controlled, that the galaxy is safer when everyone lives in isolation. She paused, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and empty. We're here to prove you wrong, not through conquest or domination, but through demonstration. We invite you to witness what happens when species choose trust over fear, cooperation over isolation, hope over despair. And if you choose to attack us anyway, she continued, her voice hardening, you'll discover that humans don't surrender easily. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have destroyed us. We've learned that the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. As the first coalition ships entered the outer solar system, Elena prepared for humanity's first battle as members of a galactic community. Win or lose, the universe would never be the same. The battle that would reshape galactic civilization began not with weapons fire, but with something the coalition forces had never experienced, an invitation to dialogue. Coalition vessels. This is Admiral Sarah Chun, commanding the combined human Drachmary defense fleet. The message broadcast across all frequencies. We request parley before any hostilities commence. We have information that concerns the future of all galactic civilizations. The response came from the lead Shektar vessel, its crystalline hull gleaming with deadly energy. Primitive species surrender the Drachmary refugees and withdraw from galactic affairs. You have 1 standard hour to comply. Elena, monitoring communication from the command center on Titan Station, felt her heart sink. The coalition wasn't interested in talking. But then another voice joined the conversation, this one transmitting from the edge of the solar system. This is Captain Zethera of the Nevin Exploration Corps. We received your invitation to witness. Permission to observe these proceedings? Elena exchanged excited glances with Marcus. Their desperate gambit had worked. Other species were arriving to watch, drawn by humanity's unprecedented invitation to witness a confrontation with the coalition. More voices joined the communication channels over the next hour. Young civilizations that had been living in fear of the coalition, older species that had chosen isolation over confrontation, even some neutral observers who hadn't taken sides in galactic politics for millennia. By the void, whispered Dr. Zhang, monitoring the sensor readings. There are over 100 ships out there now. Species we've never even heard of. Tetra Visura, her massive form coiled around the command center's central console, watched the tactical displays with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. This has not happened for 3,000 years, she said softly. So many species gathering in one place, choosing to engage rather than hide. The coalition commander's next transmission carried unmistakable fury. All observing vessels, withdraw immediately or be classified as hostile. This is an internal matter of galactic security. The response that came back shocked everyone, including Elena. It was Captain Zethera again, but his voice was joined by dozens of others. Coalition forces, we observe by right of ancient law. If you choose to attack us for witnessing, you prove the very tyranny these humans and Drachmary claim to oppose. Elena realized that humanity's decision to invite witnesses had fundamentally changed the nature of the confrontation. The coalition couldn't simply destroy Earth without also attacking neutral observers, which would expose their methods to the entire galaxy. Admiral Chun, came Tessera's voice over the command frequency. We are receiving multiple requests from observing vessels. They wish to know more about our partnership, our technology sharing, our plans for the future. Elena felt a surge of hope. Tell them everything. Full transparency. Let them see exactly what cooperation between species can accomplish. What followed was the most extraordinary cultural exchange in galactic history. While coalition warships maintained threatening positions throughout the solar system, dozens of curious species sent delegations to examine the human Drachmary colony on Titan. Dr. Kim found herself serving as translator for representatives from 7 different civilizations, all eager to understand how 2 vastly different species had learned to work together so effectively. Engineers from a Nevin Exploration Corps studied biomechanical hybrids that combined Drachmary organic technology with human innovation. Young scientists from the Kellen Republic documented agricultural techniques that could revolutionize food production across the galaxy. But it was a delegation from the Thrix Confederacy that asked the most important question. Humans Elena and Marcus, their translator, requested, we must understand. The coalition offers stability through separation. What do you offer instead? Elena and Marcus exchanged glances. This was the moment everything had been building toward, the chance to articulate humanity's vision for galactic civilization. "We offer growth through cooperation," Elena said. "The Coalition maintains order by ensuring that no species becomes too powerful, too influential, too connected to others. But that's not stability, that's stagnation." Marcus picked up the theme. "Look around you. In 6 months of working together, humans and Drachmary have achieved things neither species could have managed alone. We've developed new technologies, new ways of thinking, new possibilities for the future. And the risks?" asked the Thrix representative. "Cooperation can lead to conflict when interests diverge." "Yes," Elena admitted. "But isolation leads to death. Not just physical death, but cultural death, intellectual death, the death of dreams and possibilities. The Coalition has kept the galaxy safe for 3,000 years, but what has it accomplished? How has galactic civilization advanced? How many incredible discoveries have been lost because species were afraid to share knowledge?" The Thrix delegation huddled together in animated discussion. Through the translator, their leader eventually responded, "We find your arguments compelling, but the Coalition maintains military supremacy. How do you propose to survive their displeasure?" That question was answered by an unexpected source. Vorthak, the ancient Drachmary warrior scholar, emerged from the bio-ship modifications that had been proceeding for days. His massive form bore new appendages, crystalline growths that pulsed with unfamiliar energy. "The Coalition believes they understand Drachmary capabilities," he announced to the assembled observers. "They are mistaken. We have been peaceful for millennia, but we have not been idle. Observe. What happened next redefined everyone's understanding of stellar engineering." Vorthak and 3 other modified Drachmary dragons positioned themselves around Titan Station and began to sing. But this was not the gentle harmonics Elena had heard before. This was something deeper, more powerful, resonating at frequencies that seemed to touch the fabric of space itself. The effect was immediately visible on long-range sensors. The gravitational fields throughout the solar system began to shift and flow like water. Asteroid fields that had been stable for millions of years started moving in precise formations. Most spectacularly, Jupiter itself began to pulse with new energy as the Drachmary songs triggered controlled fusion reactions in its atmosphere. "Stellar choreography," Teachmasura explained to the stunned observers. "The ability to treat entire solar systems as musical instruments. We developed it for planetary defense during our wandering years, but it has other applications." Elena watched as Coalition ships found themselves caught in carefully controlled gravitational currents that made aggressive positioning impossible without also damaging their own vessels. The Drachmary hadn't attacked anyone, but they had effectively neutralized the Coalition's military advantage through pure manipulation of physics. "Impressive," came the Coalition commander's grudging admission. "But temporary. We have resources you cannot imagine. And we have something you've forgotten," Elena replied, broadcasting to the entire assembled fleet. "We have allies. Real allies, not subjects or subordinates, but partners who choose to stand with us." As if summoned by her words, the Nevin Exploration Corps ships moved into defensive positions around the human Drachmary forces. They were followed by vessels from the Kellan Republic, the Thrix Confederacy, and a dozen other species that had been watching the confrontation unfold. "Coalition forces," came Captain Thura's voice, now speaking for the assembled alliance. "You face not just 2 species, but a new model of galactic civilization. We choose cooperation over isolation, growth over stagnation, hope over fear. Stand down, or face the consequences of trying to destroy what we've chosen to build together." Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what was happening. Humanity's desperate gambit had done more than save Earth. It had sparked a galactic revolution. Species that had lived in isolation for millennia were choosing to stand together against the forces of stagnation and control. The Coalition's response was swift and Predictable. All vessels, you are now classified as hostile to galactic security. Prepare to be pacified. But as the coalition ships moved to attack, they discovered that their opponents had spent the last few days doing more than just talking. The biomechanical hybrids that human and Drachmarie engineers had developed proved capable of things that neither species had achieved alone. Ships that could heal themselves, weapons that adapted to defensive systems, communications networks that functioned at quantum levels across interstellar distances. The battle that followed was brief, but decisive. Not because one side overwhelmed the other, but because the coalition forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to conform to their understanding of how warfare should work. Human ships that should have been destroyed continued fighting with Drachmarie biotechnology, keeping them alive. Drachmarie vessels that should have been overwhelmed used human tactical innovations to outmaneuver superior numbers. Allied ships from dozens of species provided support in ways that the coalition's computer models couldn't predict. But the most important moment came when a Vorlok dreadnought, frustrated by its inability to land decisive blows, targeted Titan Station directly with a planet-killer weapon. Elena watched in horror as the massive energy beam lanced toward the colony that represented everything humanity and the Drachmarie had built together. The beam never reached its target. Instead, it was absorbed by a lattice of crystalline structures that had grown around the station during the battle. Marcus, working with a team of Thrix engineers and Drachmarie bioshapers, had created a defensive system that converted destructive energy into power for the colony systems. Impossible, the coalition commander transmitted. That technology doesn't exist. It does now, Marcus replied calmly. That's what happens when species work together instead of apart. We create possibilities that none of US could achieve alone. The battle ended not with surrender or destruction, but with something unprecedented in galactic history: negotiation. Faced with an alliance that grew stronger through diversity rather than weaker through division, the coalition forces found themselves unable to achieve their objectives through force. Elena found herself serving as humanity's representative in talks that would reshape galactic civilization. The final agreement established new principles for interspecies relations: cooperation over isolation, mutual benefit over domination, growth over stagnation. The coalition maintained their right to defensive isolation for species that chose it, but they could no longer force that choice on others. Young civilizations would be free to seek allies and partners to share knowledge and resources to build something greater than the sum of their parts. Standing on the observation deck of Titan Station 6 months after the battle, Elena marveled at what the galaxy had become. Trade networks that had been forbidden for millennia were reopening. Knowledge that had been hoarded in isolation was being shared freely. Young species that had hidden in fear were reaching out to potential allies. Do you think we made the right choice? Marcus asked, joining her at the viewing window. Below them, the colony that had started as a refugee camp was growing into a true interspecies city, with humans, Drachmarie, and representatives from dozens of other civilizations living and working together. Elena watched a group of human children playing with young dragons, both species learning from each other in ways their parents could barely imagine. I think we made the human choice, she said. We chose hope over fear, growth over safety, possibility over certainty. And if it all goes wrong, Elena smiled, thinking of all the species that had joined their alliance, all the knowledge being shared, all the dreams being pursued across the galaxy. Then, at least we'll have tried. And that's more than the galaxy has had for 3,000 years. Teacher Cicera approached them, her ancient voice carrying warmth that Elena had never heard before. The young Drachmarie are dreaming again, she said softly. For the first time in millennia, they see a future worth building toward. What do they dream of? Elena asked. Gardens spanning solar systems. Cities that grow like living things. Ships that carry not just bodies, but hopes and dreams across the void. They dream of a galaxy where being different is strength, where cooperation creates wonders, where young civilizations like yours can teach ancient peoples like mine to see new possibilities. Elena looked out at the stars, no longer cold and distant, but warm with the light of countless civilizations reaching out to touch each other across the void. Humanity had asked for help from a herd of dragons, and the answer had changed not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and finally, after 3,000 years of enforced silence, it was talking again.